Former acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney was one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters throughout his presidency. Mulvaney also served as the director of the Office of Management and Budget. He was named Special Envoy to Northern Ireland when Mark Meadows took over as Trump's Chief of Staff in 2020. Mulvaney spoke about what led to his resignation and what he thinks about the January 6th committee's hearings so far. As acting White House Chief of Staff, you work directly with the White House counsel. What should people know about Pat Cipollone?
A very honest man. When he puts his hand on the Bible and swears to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I expect exactly that. Pat and I fought daily. In fact, didn't speak the last several weeks we were working together. We didn't get along personally, but he was a man of integrity, and I believe him to be telling the truth. My guess is he'll be speaking, will be asked questions directly about what Cassidy Hutchinson said. Pat was referenced several times in Cassidy's testimony, and it would be obvious that those questions would be asked by members of the committee. That being said, there's no limit, I don't think, Catherine, on what can and cannot be discussed. So the simple fact he's sitting there would essentially allow the committee to ask him just about anything they wanted to, even if it was outside the bounds of Cassidy's testimony.
Former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson worked for you. She testified that Pat Cipollone said, "We're going to get charged with every crime possible if Trump goes to the Capitol." Based on your experience, does that testimony ring true?
Yeah, in fact, I was watching it, listening to Cassidy's testimony. I'm like, yeah, I could absolutely see Pat saying that. That sounds like his word use. I can hear that sentence in his voice coming through my head. Just as she testified other things that he said. That, yes, that sounds like something that Pat would say.
Based on your contacts, what do you think was happening with then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows?
Yeah, again, I don't have any context. I have Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, which was that he was completely disengaged. I was talking with a friend of mine during the testimony last week, and I was texting back and forth. And this person was in the West Wing during the January 6th riots, and I said, you know, if I listen to Cassidy closely, it sounds like Mark was either completely incompetent at the job or was having a nervous breakdown. And the person texted back, it was a little bit of both. So you sort of get this impression that things had really broken down and that Mark Meadows, as the Chief of Staff, which is a critical position, especially in these critical moments, had checked out entirely.
So wait a second. I just want to be clear there. You've had information contact with someone who was inside the White House on January 6th, and their assessment was that then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows had lost control, had kind of checked out. Those were the words that you used.
Yeah, well, actually, Cassidy's words were checked out. My words was Mark having a nervous breakdown, or was he just that incompetent? And the response was it was a little bit of both. That would explain a lot of the breakdown in the West Wing.
You were a Trump loyalist. What was your tipping point?
I have defended the president over the course of more than the last year over how I didn't believe that his actions on January 6th were criminal. I did not believe specifically that he incited a riot. I quit that night. I quit because I think he failed at being the president when we needed him to be that. He was my boss. I was working in the State Department at the time, and the only objection I could make was to quit. But I defended him against the charges of criminal activity up until Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. Again, I know her. She works for me. There's no reason for her to lie. And if she goes up and says the president knew there were guns, that makes me scratch my head.
Was the Trump White House a hard place to speak up?
Oh, no, it was encouraged. I know that sounds crazy, but it was encouraged. The president managed by conflict. He would love to have people in a room who would fight with each other, who had differences of opinion. My fear is that simply broke down in the last days of the last term, and that the normal people were not there, that for whatever reason it was only the crazies.
Why did you write earlier this month that Republicans should pay attention to the January 6th hearings?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the hearings. I thought that they should have allowed the Republicans to put the people on the commission the committee that they should have. That Jim Jordan should be there, that Andy Biggs should be there, and that Nancy Pelosi was wrong to exclude them. That violated the customs and the history of the U.S. House of Representatives. So I've never been a fan of this committee, and I've always thought that it was wrong for Liz and for Adam Kinzinger to go on there. For that reason, whenever Liz talks, I don't believe it. I refuse to believe her interpretation of the facts. All of that being said, When a Republican goes under oath and says something about a Republican president trying to undo an election, I pay attention to that. When Republicans go on the record and say other Republicans may have broken the law, I think all Republicans should look at that. In fact, I think everybody should.
Do you think the January 6th hearings have so damaged former President Trump that he can't seek the Republican nomination in 2024?
No. In fact, I think if anything, it probably makes it more likely that he will seek the nomination. He'll look at that race as an opportunity to clear his name, to fight back, which is his nature. He wants a platform, and if he's running for president, he's going to get a bigger platform than he has right now. So, no, I think in a roundabout sort of way, it makes it more likely for him to run. I think the better question is, does it hurt his ability to win? And I think the answer to that is absolutely. I think a lot of folks are like me. A lot of Republicans like me going, look, I love the policies. I worked for the man for 4 years, okay? You would not get a bigger Trump supporter than Mick Mulvaney. But is it worth it right now with all of the baggage to continue to support Donald Trump in another election when I can vote for Ron DeSantis, Mike Pence, Tim Scott, Mike Pompeo, Nikki Haley, and get pretty much the same policies in that same spirit of fighting for the middle class and the same good things you saw with Donald Trump without all the baggage? I think that's the fallout from these hearings. So you ask the question, can he run? The answer is yes. I think the better question is, can he win? I think that's much more in question now than it was, say, 2 months ago.